The brain wants to try and protect you, and it wants to try to keep you safe. So today you were going to do this podcast in English and your brain is going, no, we don't normally do this. Let's step away. And this is the critical point. People generally have a choice here where they can either decide to keep going, knowing that it's going to be uncomfortable, but they can push through those barriers, and then you gain confidence. You gain understanding that it's not absence of fear, it's the presence of courage.
Benvenuti e benvenute in un nuovo episodio di Essere Serena Podcast. Oggi partirei con una domanda. Vi siete mai chiesti perché alcune abitudini e pensieri sembrano così difficili da cambiare anche quando ce la mettiamo tutta? Spesso la risposta in realtà si trova nei meccanismi con cui il nostro cervello è programmato, e in questa puntata scopriremo come la consapevolezza di questi processi e alcune azioni molto pratiche possono aiutarci davvero ad aprire la strada per un autentico benessere. Sono onorata di ospitare e avere qui con me Nicole Vignola, neuroscienziata di riferimento, creator seguita da oltre 500.000 di persone, e il suo libro d'esordio, Rewire, è già stato tradotto in 23 lingue, tra cui l'italiano, e sta aiutando migliaia di persone a riconoscere e riscrivere abitudini e convinzioni limitanti. Grazie Nicole per essere qui, sono emozionatissima.
Grazie, no, voglio piangere perché sono emozionata. Vabbè, un piacere, grazie mille. Per tutti che stanno ascoltando, ti do un po' di un'introduzione. Sono italiana, sono nata a Sanremo, sono italiana, sono Vignola. Però il problema è che sono andata a vivere in Sudafrica per 10 anni e poi sono andata a vivere in Inghilterra per 12-13 anni. Adesso sono in Portogallo. Allora, l'italiano non ho parlato tanto per molto tempo, però oggi in inglese, la prima episodio in inglese.
Esattamente, prima grazie Nicole per l'introduzione, è fantastico insomma sapere di questa, diciamo, tua origine, questo cuore, diciamo, italiano, perché appunto tu sei conosciuta e di fatto a livello internazionale, e i contenuti che crei di solito appunto sono sempre in inglese, quindi sono appunto onorata di insomma avere questo scambio. Per me il primo episodio in inglese, averlo con te è un onore.
Vabbè, io stavo pensando che magari devo vivere in Italia per magari 1 o 2 anni, così posso imparare a parlare la neuroscienza in italiana.
Sarebbe utilissimo,
Sì.
utilissimo.
Ok, ti faccio sapere in 2 anni.
Iniziamo questo episodio con delle domande in inglese. Abbiamo fatto un esercizio di regolazione.
Siamo state molto eccitate e molto emozionati.
Ma infatti no, però bellissimo. Ok, so we can start with the first question. In your book, Rewire, you mentioned that many people operate with outdated mental codes, old fears and limiting beliefs. How can we learn to distinguish our true personality from these patterns? And is it always possible to rewrite them?
Hello, in English. This is crazy. I do wish I could speak better Italian. But anyway, yes, a lot of people don't realize that the majority of our brain is plastic. Okay, so we have these habits, behaviors, beliefs that we have acquired whilst growing up. So we watch our parents interact through the world, we gain observational knowledge about how the world should operate. And so we form these kind of deep-rooted subconscious beliefs about how we should behave in the world. And the thing is, a lot of people either have the realization or they never realize that some things need to be changed. Maybe they listen to a podcast like this and they start to get that seed gets planted where they think, okay, actually I can change. So the majority of people I've ever worked with, when I explain this, they see that no matter what they have, it is something that we can change. If it's low self-worth, if it's low confidence, if it's a bad habit, if it's a pattern of anxious attachment or, emotional triggered behaviors, these can all be changed. And that's the beauty about the human brain, that no matter how old you are, we can change.
This is like so important, I think, to know, because we tend to think that it's too late for change in general. We can be in our 20s, 30s or whatever, but it's too late compared to maybe an ideal change that would have happened before.
I mean, look, I'm not old, I'm 33, but I, about a year and a half ago, decided that I was going to learn the guitar and become not a musician, but somebody that can play. And I can play pretty well now. And I did that because I wanted to show that we can learn these skills. We just, the brain is solely concerned with repetition and consistency. Okay, that's the basis of neuroplasticity, is if something happens within a specific time frame and it happens enough times, the neurons get reinforced. So here's the problem. A lot of people think that big end goal is too much, learn to play a song. Okay, so then what happens is we get put off, or we think, I haven't got an hour to train today. An hour is probably too much, but even just 5-10 minutes every day is better than 1 hour a week, right? And so when we start to reframe that and we start to take the emphasis on the end goal, we start to see that actually it's just consistent repetition. And that makes it a lot easier because the brain doesn't really care about the difference between right and wrong. It just cares that something is being repeated.
Sometimes we focus on the final goal. It seems like too far away from us. And we also linked our maybe personality or like this idea of ourselves. Either you can do that or you can't. And so maybe we focus on this, I cannot do that. While maybe what you said is really like making like possible no matter what goal is.
Well, exactly. And the majority of people that read my book say that the thing that they come away with is hope. Hope that they can change, hope that it's not the end of the world, hope that there is a different future in which things can be different. And I think that that's essentially why, the ending of Rewired was all about hope and being able to believe in yourself. So I'm glad that you said that.
That's wonderful. And like one emotion that is a bit of the opposite than like hope in general is fear. And I think that is very much related to trying new things. And I'm really noticing also like about this episode in English, for example, for me, the first time I was really, really fearful at the beginning. And I think that the majority of people, like, whenever they feel fear, they just, step away from it. What do you think about that? What's the neuroscience?
I love that. And I have goosebumps. I have goosebumps because, so I wrote about it in Rewire and I basically explained that the fear doesn't ever leave us. I'm super confident when it comes to delivering keynotes and doing podcasts, etc. But on Sunday, I actually had a webinar where I was talking about something completely new and it was a whole new thing. And even though I knew the science, I was still nervous and all week I was really anxious. Now, here's the key difference. The people that get it done, it's not that they don't feel the fear, it's that they do it anyway, okay? It's understanding that there is courage in moving through it rather than stepping away from it. Because even though the webinar was great and actually went much better than I thought, the brain wants to try and protect you and it wants to try to keep you safe. So today you were going to do this podcast in English and your brain is going, no, we don't normally do this. Let's step away. And this is the critical point, is people generally have a choice here where they can either decide to keep going, knowing that it's going to be uncomfortable, but they can push through those barriers and then you gain confidence. You gain understanding that it's not absence of fear, it's the presence of courage. You can choose to stay safe and cancel the podcast or come up with an excuse as to why we shouldn't do this, which could easily have been done.
But on the subconscious level, if someone would rather like choose to postpone or like avoid something that they want to do, but they have fear, so they just try to avoid this source of fear, what's the effect?
Well, you're constantly reinforcing that you can't give up as well, and that becomes a rehearsed behavior. So when you procrastinate, when you avoid, that becomes a habit in itself or a behavior that you can take. Whereas maybe somebody that has these kind of non-negotiables where they understand that, pushing yourself through the barriers is part of the process, they don't have that. That's going to feel discomforting in itself. I wanted to give up all week, but actually the thought of giving up was bigger than pushing through because I've never given up. I've never canceled on something like this, even though my brain wanted me to do it.
It's nice to know that also people that you admire have fears and you are not the only one and it's normal. Otherwise it's just, again, it's like a reinforcing or this limiting belief.
100%. Exactly. And I got a quote from a book called The Law of Art. Stephen Pressfield spoke about how Henry Fonda was obviously a famous actor and he was still being sick. He was still throwing up before every single performance, even at the age of 78. And so he was still fearful, but he did it anyway. And that's the essence of anyone that is successful, is that we still carry this fear with us. We just know that we have to carry it with us. It's part of the process, right? It doesn't ever leave us. And so again, I reiterate, it's not the absence of fear, it's the presence of courage in that fear.
What do you think we have to know about our brain in order to avoid those situation of like avoidance, start considering the brain that we have and make it an ally instead of an enemy?
Well, I think that, seeing it as a mechanism is hugely helpful because it takes the emphasis off the person. So a lot of people think that there's something wrong with them or that they have dysfunctional brains. But when we see it as a mechanism or a piece of machinery that has been programmed in a particular way, you start to see that actually, yes, maybe you have been programmed over time to avoid the fear or, behave in a particular way that is avoidant or procrastinative. And so that's just been a repeated behavior that's been ingrained. And when you see it as kind of like data entry and input, you can now go, okay, well, actually, I can change that and I can take a different route. And if we think about neuroplasticity, we think about the brain, you've got these paths that have been deeply ingrained. Those are easy to take. We call that an automaticity, which means you do something without thinking about it. How many times you grab your phone without realizing it, or how often do you do things without realizing? That is the brain's deeply rooted mechanism that allows you to save energy for more cognitively demanding tasks. We also have something called mental heuristics, which means that we take shortcuts to arrive at a particular decision. And that, again, is done because it wants to save energy for the brain. So if you've got this path that's been laid down, that's been ingrained, and it's easy to take, think of it as like a highway. It's easy to go that way. And when you're tired, why would you want to go any other way but the easy way home, right? When you want to start a new habit or change a belief or undo something or push through the fear, you have to start going down a different route. And unfortunately, that different route is new. You have to lay it down. You have to put down the bricks and lay down the foundations and put the street lamps up and make it, worthy of traveling down. And that costs energy, mental energy and time and effort. And when you're tired, it's so easy to just go, well, let's just procrastinate, or give up behavior that is self-sabotaging because it takes effort to make change. And when you understand that, you start to see, okay, it's just you lay it down brick by brick. It's a slow process rather than thinking, okay, I need to be there already.
Absolutely. You mentioned so scrolling, and nowadays is really like something that we spend more and more time on social media. And yes. I think that probably one of the main unconscious actions that we do, notifications, cheap dopamine. Why it's so easy to end up in those situations? What happens inside of us? I just noticed that also me myself when I trying to do something new and maybe I have not control over it because it's something new, so I have to learn it. Sometimes I just ended up just checking notification, doing this and that, and I'm feeling like so bad after, but it's just automatic. So I really would like to get rid of that.
It's a form of self-sabotage as well, because it's easy again. So it's a form of self-sabotage. But the reason why phones and social media can be so addictive is because there's a couple of layers to this. One, it's easy. It's right here. It's right here. If I want to eat chocolate, I have to get up. I have to take myself to the kitchen. I have to take the chocolate. I have to, eat it. And then I come back in and I think about it. Do I want more? Right? Or I don't have chocolate. I have to drive to the store to buy it. There's a lot of steps involved. Whereas with the phone, it's right here. It's so easy to just grab it. It's like an extension to our body. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is that dopamine is released under two conditions. One, in an expected reward, like that you're going to attain the reward, so your pursuit of this reward is increased through dopaminergic activity. Or, this is the caveat, or the detrimental part more like it, is that we release dopamine in unexpected rewards. And that releases a huge surge of dopamine. Now, dopamine is a reward-based learning mechanism that told you what you did to feel good, so let's keep doing that. So every time you reach for your phone, you don't know if you're going to have a notification or a comment or a message from somebody. And so you go on social media, reinforce, someone's messaged me saying that they like my podcast. And so you start to learn that if you go on there, you may or you may not receive some kind of gratification.
It's so true. And in general, I really noticed that this addiction of social media notification, cheap dopamine, raise when I have the sensation of not having control over things. Yeah. Is there like any connection or is more linked to some other reasons?
I would say it's probably more linked to a sense of comfort. The phone is a source of comfort because you're going to get enjoyment from it and you can connect with people. So there's there's this kind of feeling of like being disconnected as well from the phone if you have it somewhere else, right? And I know this because I feel anxiety if I think about my phone being away from me, right? And so it calls for a bigger intervention, and that is that we need to aim to try and create some separation from our phones, right? Because it's kind of like in a way become part of a limb. If you know, if you lost a limb right now, it would be devastating. And I know that that sounds dramatic, but to some degree, it is this thing that you have on you all the time. And I know as well, like personally, I can resonate with the feeling of wanting to go to bed and then leaving my phone in the living room and then feeling the sense of discomfort. Like it's almost like a pacifier, I don't, the thing you give to babies. And when it's not there, it's kind of like, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And so that is why, I did a post recently about creating separation from your phone and leaving it at home where possible. Now, of course, I always say move with caution. If you live somewhere that is unsafe, you don't want to go walking without your phone. I live in a very serene, safe place, so I leave my phone at home when I go for a walk. I leave it in the car when I go to the gym. I've got a different one for music because I don't want to consistently have my phone attached to my hand. Now, here's another thought experiment. I actually moved the Instagram icon on my phone to a different area. And even though I knew it wasn't there, I clicked on that spot 23 times in one day. So try it and you'll see how automatic that behavior is, where you go there without thought, you click it and you go, oh, okay, yeah. And I want you to pay attention to how many times you do it. Or when you leave your phone at home and you want to just reach in your pocket or your bag for your phone and you go, oh yeah, I don't have it with me. It's that automatic reach. That is your brain cueing you for potential reward. And then we just reinforce it by reaching for that phone.
Yeah, actually, I tried to move the icon in another screen, and I tried also to put in black or white. I don't know if you ever, yeah, but it didn't last that long. Tricks I think that are so useful, and in particular because like there's a lot of people that use phone or like in general screens in the bed, so like before sleeping, or like checking the notification as first thing in the morning. What's the effect on the brain of doing that?
Really bad. In short, very, very bad. And I'll explain why. So here's the thing. I want people to hear this and try these things, right? Have you ever put your phone away at like 7 or 8 o'clock at night and then you don't actually really scroll on it? You do other things, like maybe you watch TV and that's fine. Do you feel a lot tired a lot sooner? Okay. I've noticed that when I'm not on my phone, I actually start getting tired at around 8 or 9 o'clock. Whereas if I'm on my phone, I get tired at around 10 or 11. Okay. So now the thing is, when we have something called a suprachiasmatic nucleus in our brain. Okay. I'll say it slowly for anyone that wants to Google these things. Our eyes are responsible for bringing light into the retina, and then that retina communicates with the suprachiasmatic nucleus to determine whether it's daytime or nighttime. So your circadian rhythm is then aligned with the outside world. The problem is that when we have this artificial light coming into our eyes late at night, the brain perceives it to still be light outside. And so what it does is it basically doesn't do anything. It communicates with the brain that we're still in nighttime. And when we turn off the phone or when we turn off the artificial light, that suprachiasmatic nucleus detects that now light is not coming in. That then communicates with an area of the brain called the hypothalamus to release melatonin. Melatonin is, everybody knows, is the hormone that helps you sleep. A lot of people supplement it, but you don't need to supplement it if you check your phone usage, right? Now, the problem is that those mechanisms take time. So you can't scroll on your phone and then roll over and expect to fall asleep straight away because melatonin, the cascade mechanism to trigger that release hasn't really started yet. And so that is why then you get the sleep delay. And then what happens usually is people go, I can't sleep. So then they reach for their phones and they start scrolling again. So it's just kind of like vicious circle. So creating separation, if you can sleep with your phone in a separate room, it will massively improve your sleep. So that's point number one. Point number two is that there's research to show that when we have artificial light coming into our eyes past 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, it impacts an area of the brain called the lateral habenula. Now, the habenula is responsible for regulating dopaminergic release in the way that it inhibits it. And what this means is that it's actually impacting the brain's ability to create dopamine when we sleep. So we wake up the next morning with less available resources. So you wake up and you feel demotivated the minute you wake up because you've been scrolling. Okay, so now you're starting with your baseline below zero. And that's why a lot of people wake up feeling groggy. They wake up feeling like they haven't slept properly. They wake up demotivated for life. They don't want to go to the gym. They don't want to get out of bed. They don't want to work out. They don't want to do anything. And they need that caffeine to kickstart the day. And that is one of the reasons why. It's multifaceted, but that's step number one. Now, the other thing is when we grab our phones first thing in the morning is that we have this window of heightened suggestibility where we can really program our subconscious. Okay, and that's in the first 45 minutes to an hour, between 30 minutes to an hour of our waking time. The brain is in low theta brainwave states, theta and alpha. And what that means is that we're heightened to suggestibility. So doing things like journaling, positive affirmations, meditation, breath work, even just planning your day, existing. Some people are religious, they pray. This is the perfect opportunity to essentially, it's almost like putting the sat nav on for your day. Okay, programming it correctly, because we create our own reality, and we can create that reality by programming our thoughts and our beliefs first thing in the morning. If we are creating our reality because we're grabbing our phones first thing, we're already comparing ourselves to the internet, we're checking emails, we're getting stressed out. Maybe you get a notification that you don't like someone leaving a negative comment on your social media. Now it's going to impact the rest of your day. And it's programming your subconscious to then operate in a particular way. I'm going to add one more layer to this. We have a confirmation bias. So if you believe that you are not worthy of something, your brain will go through the world trying to scan and find evidence as to why that statement is correct, because it's not very energy efficient for us to be incorrect about ourselves. So if you wake up and you grab your phone first thing in the morning and someone's left a negative comment on your page, you're going to be thinking about that all day, firstly. And secondly, you're going to go through the whole day trying to prove that that statement is either correct or incorrect, which is also taxing on the brain. So why not wait for an hour? Give yourself that time to really just exist, because the problem is that we don't allow ourselves to just exist through life anymore. When else did you just look at the birds outside or the flowers and just sit, right? We're always having to do something. And one of the most underrated mental health tools is to learn to sit in that boredom and simply just be.
Wow, like so many interesting insights. And I think that, like what you said, we are so used to do and we forget to be. It's really like something that I notice in those like periods in which maybe I'm more into this, I have or I should do this, not taking enough pauses, let's say, or enough time for myself. Then I ended up feeling everything as urgent. And so I'm always, let's say, behind. And I also notice less the beauty around me.
Yes. Well, so, okay, you operate through the world and your brain is there to tell you what is important, right? So right now, I'm important, but you could continue to look at me, but also see your surroundings. I can see I've got a light right here. I've got the cupboard there. I've got a shelf on here, but I'm still looking at you. That imagery is still coming in, right? The flowers, the beauty, the birds, they're all there, but your brain is saying your phone is important. And so that starts to block all of those things out. And so we can tell ourselves to just slow down and pay attention to our surroundings and the things that are important, which is the beauty in the banality of everyday life.
Absolutely. And we mentioned like social media, and another thing that happens nowadays, in particular, the news we watch, and let's say all these negative informations that we receive, and we literally like can see as first things in the morning. Like in general, it's something so common and we are kind of used to that now. What's the effect on our subconscious mind?
Totally. The things that we consume have a huge influence on our brains because it's programming us again right from the beginning. You're probably doing that first thing in the morning or throughout the day. And so there's this kind of subtle influence all the time. And that's why step number one in the rewiring is to spring clean your social media and the media that you consume. Now, of course, there's a fine balance between wanting to stay in tune with the world and the news that is going on, of course, but we can get sucked into this hole, right? And we need to implement barriers and boundaries when it comes to this, because otherwise our whole world becomes revolved around the news around us as well, which can be detrimental to our psyche, and we know that because when we're constantly consuming it, we start to, feel bad. And that can be true for the social media that we consume as well. If you're constantly following people that maybe don't make you feel good about yourself, then you probably want to try and clear that out, clear out the noise. Your energy is so important and it's so expensive, right? So why are we giving it away to things that don't matter, like comparison, like people on the internet? Like, the news matters, of course, but there's a fine line there as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
Yeah.
another thing that I listened in one of your videos, it was about whenever we consume, like in general, like contents, and we spend time on social media and this and that, it is a bit of like the opposite of creating, no? So like
Mhm.
consumption and creation, how those two concepts are related.
Exactly. So, we can consume and get inspiration from things, which is great, but the majority of our creation happens in an area called the default mode network. And the default mode network is a network of brain areas that are responsible for internal mind wandering, creativity, self-referential information, autobiographical memories. You get to think about your past, you get to place yourself in the future, and that's great. Now, the default mode network works in tandem with the central executive network. The central executive network being responsible for consuming, for paying attention to the internet, for comparison, etc., and more like goal-directed behavior, executive functions, right? And so when we're constantly consuming, we don't allow our brain the time to just exist in that mind-wandering state. And we only do that when we're doing, boring, mundane things. And it's really interesting you say that, because I remember when I wrote Rewire, I felt guilty because a lot of the times I wasn't actually doing any writing. I was just in the garden or going to the beach or doing anything but writing. And I felt guilty. I was like, I need to write more. And I realized that the majority of my ideas come from not doing anything. And so I started to embrace that part a lot more. And then there's obviously the other side of the coin where you have to then implement. So I then had to obviously come home and also do the writing. But once I've realized that, you start to see that actually just simply existing is really important, because we don't allow our brains to just find the answers. And now here's another layer to that. Your subconscious makes decisions for you all the time. Okay, so have you ever had that feeling when you don't know the answer to something? You plant a seed, you leave it a few days, and then you wake up one day doing something mundane, like washing the dishes, and you go, I know what to do here. That's because your subconscious has been allowed to speak. And if we're constantly distracting ourselves, constantly going out with friends, constantly consuming, watching Netflix, scrolling, doing anything but wanting to sit with our own thoughts, we're not allowing our subconscious brain to communicate with us. And in that subconscious brain, it has the answers to pretty much everything and anything, because it's filled with software data input of everything you've ever experienced in your life before. And it's constantly cross-referencing information with previous experiences. And if we learn to tune in and listen, we have the answers.
But actually start to listening to our thoughts could be, for so many people, I guess, really scary if there are like some unsolved emotions that maybe they are afraid to face. In those cases, do you think that like journaling, writing down could be useful?
Yes, there's two parts to it. One, unfortunately, to create a better environment for your default mode network, one has to spend time in it. Now, you may want to adopt a intervention that helps you guide you through it, like meditation, like breath work, like journaling, which allows you to be in that headspace, but in a controlled manner. And then you get pro expert meditators who will go in. I actually love meditating because I want to see how far my brain can go. I almost like want to test the boundaries with what's going to happen. Like, how freaky can it get? And that comes with time. I was also somebody who at one point had thoughts that I didn't want to sit with, or emotions that were unresolved. Now, here is the great thing about journaling, and that is that journaling helps to channel those thoughts into something that is more cohesive. Okay, so when we are in that default mode network, thoughts are spontaneous. They don't really have a beginning and an end, and they are seemingly incohesive, right? They just kind of float around, and there's no beginning, there's no end. We know that by looking at research. They're called thought worms. We observe how they begin and then where they end, and it's very random in the brain how that happens. It's actually kind of cool. But that could be quite scary to somebody who doesn't know what's going to arise, because that can come from unresolved trauma or unresolved emotions, from anxiety. And so when we channel our thoughts into writing, we activate a very small part of the brain because we have to generate words. And that requires us to think. So when we have to use the smaller part of the brain, we are now bookmarking from beginning to end how it is you're thinking or feeling. And you'll know that that works because if you ever felt a particular way and then you either speak to a friend about it, or you write it down, or you listen to a song that explains how you feel, and then all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, I know how I feel now and I feel better. And that's because you now have a narrative, you have a story to how you feel, and you've engaged logical centers of the brain to help you rationalize what is going on.
I noticed so many times, in particular before starting therapy, in which I didn't have like such a knowledge about my emotions. I was more into my head trying to control things, but without really controlling. I wasn't used to talk about my emotions, but whenever I watched movies or like, I don't know, listening to some songs, I was like, emotional all the time. That's the connection with the subconscious.
Yeah, it's your brain finally understanding what is going on and having this emotional connection where we can relate. Because as humans, we need to relate and we need to understand ourselves. And sometimes it takes watching a film or hearing a song. And I can resonate with that because when my ex and I broke up, last year, there was a song by Benson Boone that came on, not the one that's very popular, it was a different one. And I remember thinking, yeah, that's exactly how I feel about my breakup. And I remember like resonating with it so well because now I have a story to tell about how it felt and how it went. And so for somebody that maybe doesn't have the emotional intelligence to be able to explain how they're feeling, we connect through music, we connect through others, we connect through poetry. It's the reason why poetry is so, it hits us somewhere real deep, especially when we're feeling like we're in pain or, heartbroken, because it connects with us on a very deep level that gives us a sense of understanding of how we're feeling, and then connectedness through knowing that other people are going through the same thing. It's a collective experience now.
Wow. And I think that also like this point is very important. We are not alone in what we are going through, like whatever it could be, fears, thoughts that maybe are limiting us in a way. Sometimes for the first time, realizing that we are not alone, it could be like cathartic.
100%. And that's why community is so great and it's just so transformative because people connect through each other. And they end up becoming friends. And then there's a resonance of, we've been through something similar together, and that's such a beautiful thing. It's the human experience.
Absolutely. And the risk doing the opposite, like maybe always staying on your own, trying to fix yourself before connecting with the outer world, because I think that also it's a tendency of some people that maybe try not to be better before connecting with others. Is really like one day I'll be ready for, but this day never arrive.
Yes, we actually call that the arrival fallacy. So it's the belief or perceived belief that we will be happy when. And that when never comes. The only race is against yourself. Because once you get to that finish line, there's another finish line and another one and another one and another one. And then when we start to live like that, we start to end up on this hedonic treadmill where we're constantly chasing something, right? And so when we can reframe that, we start to see that actually the joy is in the journey.
Absolutely. In the here and now, like crucial. And you mentioned before like, the importance of the first hour in our morning. So what could be some actions that really could help us to really be conscious about our day and make the best out of it, but also really accessible for maybe those people that maybe say, I don't have time.
Look, you don't have to have a 1 hour morning routine. I'm not against it, but I'm kind of against it because not everyone has an hour. People have children and stuff, but even 5 to 10 minutes. Limit your phone for 30 minutes to an hour. Start with 30, but even just 5 to 10 minutes of you time. And you've got 5 to 10 minutes in the morning because if you're scrolling for that amount of time, probably more, right? And so when we can program our brain through visualization is the ability to blueprint our future. So you can visualize yourself doing something different. So I'll give you an example. A lot of my clients are trying to learn to eat slower because they want to lose weight. And actually they lose weight by teaching their central nervous system to be calm when they're eating. Because if you're eating in a stressed situation, your body's going to put that straight to storage because fight or flight and rest and digest are two separate systems. So why would your body be digesting food if you're stressed? Right? So the first thing we do is teach the client to be calmer when eating. And one way that you can do that is to visualize water. Sorry, you can keep that in. I don't mind. It's nice for people to see that there's a human experience here. But what happens is when we can visualize ourselves doing the behavior. So I get my clients to visualize themselves before every meal, taking a big breath. Do you ever do that before eating? We're always on the go. You know, I say grace because I want to slow down. I want to give thanks to the food I'm about to receive. And we just are losing that ability to do that. So I get my clients to visualize themselves in the morning, how they want to behave that day. For a lot of them, it's, visualizing themselves being slower when they eat. For some people, it's visualizing themselves being calm at work. For some people, it's visualizing themselves being able to take on the stress at work or whatever it is. This means that you can blueprint how you want to behave through the world by visualizing it first. Now, some people have aphantasia, which is the inability to visualize imagery in your head. You can write it down step by step. Okay, at lunchtime, 12 o'clock, I will take a big breath. I will then eat my food. I will be grateful for the food that I've just eaten. That's a form of visualization. Before I go into my meeting, I'm going to do the physiological sigh. I'm going to be confident when I receive the news from my boss. I'm going to walk out of that room and I'm going to take another big breath and feel great about everything that I've just, whatever it is. You can do that and you can program yourself every morning and you can do that for 5 minutes.
So accessible to really anyone. But there are people that maybe visualize worst case scenario. Is there like any negative consequence of doing that?
It's a very different mechanism and that's a very good question. A lot of people ask me this question. When we are visualizing or preparing for setbacks in a state of control, in a goal-directed manner with this is what I would like to happen, we don't tend to catastrophize because we haven't activated the systems that are responsible for threat detection, fight or flight, stress. But caveat, if you are stressed and then you try to do it, you will probably catastrophize or spiral or crash out, whatever the kids are calling it these days. And so what you can do there is do something like the physiological sigh, which you and I did at the beginning of this call, to basically tell your brain that you're safe and everything's calm. And then you can go into this goal-directed behavior where you're problem solving. Okay, so let's do the physiological sigh twice so that anybody that's listening can actually do it. So inhale through the nose, an extra sip through the nose when you're at the top, little pause at the top, and then an exhale through the mouth. Okay, so we'll do 2 together. Let's go. Lovely. One more. Gosh, it feels so good. I feel like I'm high.
So simple also.
Yeah, and you can do that anyway. You can do that before a meeting, after a meeting, when you get cut off in traffic, before a public speaking event, before a podcast, because what you want to do is you want to teach your brain and body that you're safe. You just experienced a stressful situation. Let's now regulate from it. The problem is that people don't know how to regulate. And so they stay in the state of stress. And then something else happens. And then something else happens. And then you have this cumulative effect where you then, we call it trigger stacking. Then your hair elastic breaks, and that's the thing that sends you off into the spiral. But it's because you haven't cumulatively gotten rid of that stress and recovered from it effectively. If you can do that on a regular basis, your central nervous system will become extremely malleable and extremely resilient to stress.
The importance of self-regulating and something that, 5 minutes, 2 minutes to breath is really like affordable and doable.
Yeah. I mean, you can do 5 breaths. Even 2 breaths, you felt how good we felt. Maybe if you're feeling a little bit more stressed, you want to do 5, all the way up to 10, all the way up to 20, depending on how many you need. I've had situations where I only need to do it a couple of times and I feel better. Or I have a situation where I need to do it a lot more and then I'm still, slowly bringing my central nervous system back down, depending on the situation.
So it's also learning how we function and what we need, in fact. So it's wonderful. Nicole, I have the 3 closing questions for a one word or one phrase format. So the first one is, what is a small daily practice that helps you take care of your mental well-being?
I think for me, it's definitely being present and grateful for the things I have. So somebody, I know you said one sentence, but just to explain, somebody asked me, because I have a lot of animals. I have goats, I have chickens, I have 2 dogs. And someone said to me, how do you How do you do everything? And here's the thing, I don't see any of it as a chore. I don't even see doing the bins as a chore. I actually kind of enjoy having to do those kind of things because you get to just be present. I think that's a huge way to change your psychological, view on life.
Wow, it's really like the narrative, owning the narrative.
Exactly. Reframing that all these little things that are annoying as an opportunity for you to just be present in the moment. So I like chores. I like folding clothes. I like doing the dishes. I like making my bed.
Fantastic. And the second one is what is one non-obvious but useful thing you do when you want to feel better?
Definitely the physiological sign. And I think it's also finding softness in the everyday life, like just taking a pause. Like sometimes it's just looking at the fact that I even have the ability to have 2 dogs. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to afford it, and I didn't have the house and all the time. And so sometimes our whole perception of things gets so skewed that when you just kind of like distill it back to what is like important and real, you start to change your perception. And even just a simple reframe like that, like, wow, I have 2 dogs.
How cool is that? And the last one is which lesson or quote has most inspired you on your journey and why?
Oh, okay. There's a quote by Bruce D. Perry. Comes from a book called The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. Anyone who wants to read it, it's incredible. It's about childhood trauma. But it says something along the, actually, let me get it up. Let me find it.
Yeah, please.
He says, fire can warm or consume, water can quench or drown, wind can caress or cut, and so it is with human relationships. We can both create and destroy, nurturize and terrorize, traumatize or heal each other. And I love that because we have a choice every day in how we show up for the people around us. We also have a duality in everything. Water can quench or it can drown. Fire can warm or consume. And so, not everything is as black and white as we think. There's nuance. And I think that calls for us to be a little bit more compassionate towards people. When I see somebody that's angry or upset or jealous or behaves in a particular way, there's layers to it, right? And how we then influence those around us is hugely important as well.
What a core message. Nicole, grazie mille, è stato fantastico. Veramente bellissimo, che emozione aver registrato, cioè è un onore veramente, grazie mille per tutto quello che fai.
Spero che presto ci incontriamo in persona.
Assolutamente, sarebbe un sogno. Grazie ancora Nicole per tutto e for this incredible episode. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Grazie.
Before you go,